What I was trying to do was to say, forget about business models at the moment, because in a sense, nobody knows about the business models, and think about the journalism. I think if you think about the journalism, what we've got at the moment is something which is incredibly exciting, which is about the whole part that journalism is going to play in the way that the world is going. So that is, digital is shorthand for this incredibly linked way that information is now being shared, and an entirely new balance between so-called authority figures, i.e. journalists or politicians or whoever, and what's happening in Web 2.0, which is much more about sharing, creating, having your own input. If you think about that's incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
If you begin by thinking about business models, how do you make immediate revenue from all this? You immediately close off all those journalistic options, it seems to me, and it becomes a very limiting thing.
But the luxury of having the time to do that, I mean, the clock's ticking, isn't it? People are losing money.
The clock is ticking, and I agree, it's not a stupid question to be asking. I'm just saying you get to different conclusions if you begin by thinking about business models and if you think about editorial models.
And, okay, let's come to the reaction to this, which was from an only partly informed other media magnate, one Rupert Murdoch this week, during his results. He was asked about this, and he seems to have been formed an opposing view, doesn't he, that we've got to find a way of making pay work, and if the content's right, people will pay for it. Do you see him and yourself on mutually contradictory paths here?
Every company has to do what's right for them. So I think News Corporation and Sky is one case, and I think Sky is a brilliant digital business on a subscription model. Rupert Murdoch has free businesses, such as a thing called Book Army that he's doing with HarperCollins, which is an attempt to unbundle the bit of the literary book of newspapers. So that may be right for him. He's a big boy. He's often been visionary and radical. The Guardian is our digital business. We don't have another digital business. And so I'm doing what I think is right for the Guardian. But I also think that at the moment, it's healthy that lots of different businesses ought to be doing different things. I think if we all stampeded and said, we're all going to be like Murdoch, or we're all going to be like this, then we would learn nothing. There seems to me, it's so early in this revolution that I think that there's more to be gained from all experimenting.
Another mantra he reiterated on this occasion was that content is king. That if you are going to make people read, consume, whatever is the right word to use, it's got to be something they want to do. And therefore, perhaps the usual journalistic endeavours of excellence or exclusivity or timeliness will still be important, won't it?
I think that's what's called the entitlement argument. We spend all this money, we have people in Baghdad, what we do is really expensive, therefore you've got to pay for it. And I'm not sure that's how newspapers have worked in the past. It's never been the case that readers have paid for the journalism. It's usually the advertisers. But B, it's an assertion. It's an assertion rather than, it's a hunch. And the problem is that once newspapers, which are edited baskets of content, hit the digital space, they then are under attack. Each bit of them is going to be unbundled by people who have got digital models which operate on a free basis. So it will be an interesting experiment to see whether people are prepared to pay for all this higher quality content. But at the moment, it's no more than an assertion of Rupert Murdoch saying people must pay for it. If he can do it, brilliant, and I'll eat my hat, and the Guardian will put up a gigantic paywall. But I think we should all be humble about the things we're saying at the moment, because we can't all be right.
But there are hybrids around there, aren't there? I mean, the FT has allowed you to browse its its landing page, its home page.
Yeah.
But as soon as you want to actually read anything that's written by one of their learned scribes, you've had to pay. Now, does it matter? They have, I suppose, a modest readership, and it is a very specialist area of journalism, so perhaps people are prepared to pay for specialism, but not in the mainstream?
Well, I think one of the things about the FT is it is financial information. We know that there is an advantage in the timeliness of financial information is critical, because there's a value in whether I can beat you by 30 seconds, or you can beat me by 30 seconds. And the third thing about the FTE is that you can claim it on expenses, or your company pays. So those are three fairly critical things which make it different from your run-of-the-mill newspaper. So that's the right model for the FTE. So that's what I say. Every company is going to establish a different model. I mean, I think we're all agreed that if you can find specialist, hard-to-replicate material which is valuable, then I think we would all want to pay for it. And also, I think we'd want to pay, if we can get people to pay on mobile where there is an established payment model, let's go for it. The only thing I'm expressing caution about is a universal paywall in which you say you can't get at any of our content without paying.
Well, let me ask you about that, because devices, perhaps, I don't know whether they come after the horse or the cart and the horse, which, but you have talked, you talked in your lecture about maybe paying for mobile. If there is a purity of access or a right of access to this stuff and you want it free, why are you happy to countenance a pay model for one device but not for another?
Well, there are two or three reasons. One is it's about functionality, not content. So we've built a Guardian iPhone app, which is a beautiful thing, and which works really well. And people, we didn't know what to charge for it. We were the first people to charge, and we charged £2.39, and we sold 70,000 in the first month. Which, as I said in my lecture, it's a signal. It's not an epiphany. It's not going to be the thing that changes our lives, but it shows that people are prepared to pay. Why are they prepared to pay? Because the functionality is useful, and there's a charging mechanism. People are used to paying for iTunes on their iPhones. I think that is a different world from desktops, where people there is no charging mechanism, and people have not been prepared to pay. So you're introducing a new thing. So it seems to me the future of mobile is different from desktops.
And does that stretch into other devices? An iPad one thinks of, yet even to be hit the market. But e-readers are out there, and the potential, I suppose, with a more powerful e-reader is it is much more like a video newspaper. The articles could be updated on the fly. The picture doesn't need to be a picture, it could be video.
I've got absolutely no problem at all about charging on mobile. And I think the iPad will be the next fascinating stage of where that all goes. I'm not some kind of sort of Taliban fundamentalist that says it's all got to be free as a matter of principle. I'm yet to see the evidence that it's going to work universally. And it's my second point that I think the moment you say we're going to put a universal charge wall around everything, you cut yourself off from the way that journalism should be working in future. You cannot through edit. So what I mean by that is if in newspapers, we're all increasingly saying the way journalism works is you can tell that story in a sentence, that story can be told in a tweet, that story can be told in a link. This is a 5,000 word double page spread, and this is a hyperlinked piece of text. If you wake up in the morning, you've got all those options, including blogs, and the responses from the audience. That is the most powerful expression of journalism we've ever seen. That's a great way to edit. If you can't do that because your audience is behind a paywall and you're not available to the rest of the world, then you cut yourself off from something which is incredibly powerful. So it's a very fundamental choice you're making.